friends, I'm Colonel Failure and this is Factorio. Well, recently we've flitted into the future. We've come back here to the present time as we look to turn this, frankly, disorganized factory into something a little bit more efficient, I think is the way to describe it. Not least of all when it comes to inefficiency is the oil processing area I've got down here, and quite a lot of what I'm doing right now is fundamentally based on just getting stuff built in order to expand further. When you look at power, for example, as much as I've got solar set up, it's not set up particularly well. And right now, everything sort of hinges off this kind of resource processing area I've got up here. Now, I quite like this resource processing area, but it's not the future. This is not where we are heading with this series, with this setup. This is all very temporary stuff. So I thought, I've been talking about stuff being temporary for ages. So it's high time I started working on something with a little bit more permanence to it. Actually, have I jumped the gun here? No, I'm fine. So first things first, let's talk furnacing. Furnacing are fundamental to the game, and in that sense, what I'm going to do is build my furnace section down here. I've ummed and ahed about doing it elsewhere, but if we go to the big ugly map for a moment, this area here, furnacing, then north of the lake, as we look at it right now, will be kind of processing manufacturing, probably with separate stuff spinning off over here as we get bigger. And over here will be resource input, because we're going to run out of all of these kind of starter resources that we've got. So, the little steel iron section that we've got going on here, and all this copper's going to vanish relatively quickly. Having played into the future, this section of iron down here, that disappears before you know it. So it's really rail import of goods is going to be pretty important pretty quickly, not least of all in terms of coal. And while I'm hoping to migrate away from coal as my primary fuel for power and the like, I will still need it for making plastic, and plastic becomes increasingly important. So the one thing that I'm going to do that is somewhat different to the way that I've got it now is I am going to segregate resources on their way in. I just need to think about exactly how that layout's going to be. I think it's going to be like this, and we'll go in tens. So I've got 20 furnaces built and ready to rock. What's that? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And with this many, if you imagine we're feeding in on one side and out on the other, the trouble will come if all of these are running at capacity, which they will on occasion, I'm sure. If they are running at capacity, then any single belt I'm running at this end will be so clogged that this one will never actually drop anything out of there. So it will become increasingly inefficient over time. But I want to set it up in such a way that we've got burst capability. What is burst capability? I hear you cry. Or not, as the case may be. Well, that's kind of a fundament to the factory setup that I like to work with. Where are we going here? Where we're going is we go with smarts. I want smarts on here, if you would be so kind. Obviously, if I'd have built these in advance, I would look far more professional and seamless about things. But if you've watched any episodes of me doing this stuff before, you know that professional and seamless is not my calling card. So let's rock this down here. So we've got the import line of raw resources coming up the middle here. And we've got our smart inserters going on there, and they're actually not going to serve much of a purpose until such a time as I've got the kind of robotics network up and running, because I'm going to do this based on provider chests and storage chests and the logistics network generally, rather than any other system. So I mean, I could there are a great many things you can use wires to accomplish in order to smarten up early on, but I don't like wires in the sense of they just look untidy. And while you can make some nice patterns for those of you for whom nice patterns are a thing that we care about. That's, you know, I think they look untidy, so I'm going to aim and build something a little bit more clinical, perhaps, out of this setup. And you will be the judge of whether I've pulled that off. Let's get that facing the right way. So the basic principle is, we're not quite there. Do this, right? Then lay in a bit of belt, and then we'll talk about the basic principle is. There we go. Right, there we go. Right, the basic principle is, and this belt will be too slow, but don't worry about that for now. This is a placeholder. These fast inserters here, they grab everything that comes in of an iron-based nature. How are we doing up here? No, that's walls being damaged, which means there's no turrets in range. Oh no, 3 turrets are engaged. I'm sure they'll be fine. I ought to go and look anyway. Let's get a couple of repair packs on the go, just to keep things ticking along. Anyway, visualize the bit we were just looking at. You got it? Yeah? Right? So, iron comes in along that line, and we grab all of that iron and chest it up. However, the smart inserters that we've got going on there do not put anything into a furnace until there is demand for it. And demand will be dictated by how much of the material itself I've got stored. Right? See, that's the general plan there, so that I don't end up with thousands upon thousands of materials just lying around, not doing anything practical. Rather, we keep a finite stock ready to roll as and when required. Let's put one more up just so that we don't take quite so much damage in the future. Check the ammo levels respectable. Yeah, so yeah, we store up the raw materials, and then as and when we run low of well, in this case iron plate, they spring into life, and lo and behold, we're churning out a megaton of iron plate in one go. The whole thing just makes it so that you don't get clogged up quite so often, and that if you are in a fallow period of usage, you can build up resources in here. So if each of these has got, you know, a couple of hundred iron ore in, you can really start to process this stuff in a hurry. And then obviously, because it will over deliver, you'll end up in a position where you've got a surplus built up in your storage area, and then you repeat the process. So when all of that's used up, you go again. I've used it before. It's a good way of keeping your power usage under control, while at the same time making sure nothing gets out of hand as far as kind of belts and production and the rest of it. Right, what do we want here? Let's go for... bullet damage is going to take too long. Let's get the rest of the necessary bits and pieces for rail transportation. So we do exactly the same thing along here on both sides of this belt, because we'll have 20 furnaces to handle iron, which may feel excessive, but it's you'd be surprised how quickly you get it done. There we go. Those are all steel chests, right? No, those are iron chests. Oh well, some lucky blighters there got steel, and I appreciate that for some of you this may feel uncomfortable, is to be mixing with chests, but it's okay. We'll get through it together. I am, however, going to need some more resources, because I haven't got enough to build the inserters I need. And then we furnace up. So obviously, with this being the iron section, we will have some of this dedicated to producing iron that goes into making steel, and the rest of it will go into the central resource kind of area for it. Let's also, since we're here, let's grab a bunch of that. So this is concrete, and concrete is a relatively new development. I mean, the last time I played Factorio for any kind of a length, concrete was not a thing that existed, and now that it does, I'm a very happy individual. Concrete's a wonder. It's a marvel, and I'll show you why, just in case you've never come across it yourself. I'm sure you have. But no, concrete is a many splendid thing, because we bash it down like this, and it ups your foot speed dramatically. So initially, I'm going to just plonk this down fairly willy-nilly, but the overall goal will be to properly fill everything in. And the other thing that I want to do is segregate individual sections of the factory itself, and partly for security purposes, but equally for aesthetics. Aesthetics is the thing. But here's where it gets really cool. No, not quite. Yeah. We'll do it now. So if I've got concrete underneath conveyors, it means you run faster still when charging down a conveyor. So you can properly zip around. Anyway, that's the end of the concrete for the moment. And it looks far more orderly. This is a good thing. Right, let's get a few of these chaps done. Equally, I do need 20 of these. Now, I could have just held control down and done that properly, but why break the habit of a lifetime? Okay, let's do the bottom section. So what are we going to need here? 1 every 2. Something like that. There we go. And then we'll do the same up the top. Oh, not quite enough. Oh well, we'll get these guys on the go while I'm waiting. So the way I'm thinking of handling steel is I'll probably route the first 2 of these 2, or maybe the last 2, out to a second furnace section, in order to turn it into steel. That way, it never hits the main supply, because if you're using the main supply as a means of calculating whether or not to turn on your furnacing burst, having it not calculating steel correctly means that you do run the risk of actually running out of steel. I know this because I've done it, and that's you learn more by getting it wrong than you do by getting it right, which is why I know so much. Alright, good. That's all splendid. So I need a bit more concrete. I'm putting a turret up here just in case, Johnny Biter decides to turn up and go, oh, nice furnaces you had, and chew them all up. But yeah, that's the basic principle. So the amount we can output from here really is pretty hefty, and I mean, this is not what you want, right? This single belt coming out the other side, that will not do the job. I'm putting it there now just for kind of layout purposes, so I can get a feel for splitting stuff out. Now, one of the things that works, have I got any? Of course I haven't. Is if you stick a splitter, come on, the time for you to have been ready was then. Yeah, that, right. So if you stick a splitter once every couple, kind of like that, and actually you don't want to do it like that, you want to do it like this, because these guys are going to place it onto the top edge of that belt, and then we route that onto there and then run forwards again, so you're stashing both sides. Then you do keep a relatively reasonable number of gaps in the main belt. And if I were to put a blue belt down here, a turbo belt, that should make for enough space to be able to keep all of those running. So we put splitters every couple, feed onto the speedy belt, and that will allow all of these furnaces to output. At least that's the theory. So we'll get to that in due course. Now is not due course. In fact, I don't even want it there. I want it here. I'll put 1 on just to remind myself what I'm doing when I come back to it. There we go. Right, now we stick another one there. This runs along the top. Let's build another one of those just so that I've done it twice, and then I can see that there's some pattern in my thinking. With that, right. Right, and then we do exactly the same thing again. Keep this moving along, and that should over time balance out. Obviously, some road testing is going to be needed on that front in order to make sure that I'm not mistaken. Likewise, we're going to need some more power going on up the top and what have you. So I'll have steel construction going on up here, and that will all route into some kind of mass storage facility that pumps out at a really quite hefty rate the goodies that are being processed, and then we need to repeat it again, probably half the size. So I'll probably do 5s for copper purposes, because you don't use quite as much copper as you do iron. The other benefit, of course, is this is completely extendable. The only limitation I'm going to get is the speed of the belts actually bringing stuff in the first place. Now, the next challenge is, do I switch it on now? So, I think I mentioned in the last episode that, one of the things about Factorio is you're constantly building and then rebuilding and building some more, and then, you know what else? Let's rebuild. And it's a constant process of renewal and improvement as you progress. Thank you. Let's just keep going on with the reds and greens, because at some point I'm going to have to bring blue flasks into play, and that's the time at which I want to be ready to roll, really, with any kind of efficient setup. Because you can't mess about once you're into blue flasks. You need to be organised by then. Otherwise, the whole thing does take on a very haphazard appearance. There you go. Let's stick that on there. And right now, one of my objectives actually is to mine these areas dry, because I don't want. I mean, as much as I can build over the top of this ore field here. No, I want it gone. It would be wasteful otherwise. Give me that and this and that. There we go. Let's make sure we're topped up. Now, again, having played through a little more in other realms, what I've found is that actually I am doing very nicely for a lack of biter incursion. And I haven't set this up with any kind of easy or low alien population or anything along those lines. I just appear to have landed in a relatively quiet area, to the extent that the biter boys aren't paying me any kind of a regular visit. Because about now I should be getting chewed up on a near constant basis. So I'm going to start trying to mark out my territory in such a way that I've got kind of clear perimeters set. So maybe that's the next thing to do. Let's get another one of these guys built. Equally, I've got maybe no. So much for that. I thought for a moment there I was going to be able to do a whole bunch of solar plants. What else do I need? I've got circuits. I thought I had circuits galore. Flipping heck. What do you got for me? Oh, yeah, circuits galore. Let's get back over here. Bash a bunch of those in. What else do you need? A bit of steel. How are you doing for steel? You're doing all right for steel. Yeah, so, I mean, the only alien incursions I'm getting tend to be up here right now. And these guys are picking them off, with no real complaint. I'll top them up for ammo, just so that when they do start to run low, well, it will be later when they start to run low. Likewise, I'm going to get, where's that new assembler I built? I'm going to get walls happening. Right, okay, we're finally done on this brick plant. How many bricks have I got in there? Loads. Right, let's convert all of that. Oh no, I didn't need to build one of them. What's going on? There you go, we'll do that. And then I've got a spare chest, which is something like that. Do a bit of this. Not now. Do I want rail lights? I think there's more pressing things than rail lights. Stick on one of those. Stick on one of them. Tell it what I make. Get to work. There you go. That'll keep that out of trouble for a bit. Excellent. Right, when you're done, I'm going to wall the place up a bit. Likewise, I'm going to need more turrets than I'm currently hanging on to. I mean, the good news is I've got this, this nice chunk of coastline which is readily defensible It's simply going to be a case of where I figure out my rail system, because some kind of exotic, extensive station for the unloading of commodities, I think is going to be a good wheeze. But yeah, okay, right. Well, it looks like I've turned into an explorer for a minute. If this is all coastline, this is a tremendously lucky start point. Alright, let's keep going until we find a biter nest, and then I think we'll get a feel for where the hostility is going to... They're just a no-show. Right, well... Oh, excellent. And more resources and no biters to be seen. Okay, I think what this calls for is getting a radar set up to kind of scope the general area more thoroughly. But it certainly looks like I've got a very easy environment to work in. Long may it last. I mean, the only time that's going to cause any sort of a problem is when I start to need alien artifacts. But frankly, that's a problem I welcome. As much as I don't want it, you know, an easy ride necessarily, it's certainly not a bad thing. There we go. Let's get you rolling. Now, I could plonk up a couple of radar to improve the speed at which I scan the thing out, but the power, though they are not the most power efficient item you can come up with. Yep, I know, I don't have to concrete underneath these furnaces, but I do it anyway because I will know that I haven't done it. Right, we've got everything? Pretty much. Let's do this top section here. Fantastic. Right, yeah, so these are going to lead into smart chests down here when I get them. So I think I need RoboPort technology, and we're not a million miles away from that. Personal RoboPort. What do we need for that? Construction robots. There we go. That's what we want. Construction robots, which requires flight and robotics. Where's flight? Flight's not yet on the list. I need the electric engine, which is on the list. Right, okay, electric engine next. All right, so that's what we'll do next time around, is we'll press on towards early stage logistic network stuff. And that should yield a fairly reasonable bit of progress. So hopefully the plan makes sense, and you look forward to seeing it come to fruition. I know I certainly do. And there we go. Look, the coal's run out. That's it. We're done for coal. So I'm going to start thinking about solid fuel and the like in order to keep the turbines rolling. So tune in next time, and we'll progress towards logistics, which will allow me to smarten this place up a little. Thanks very much for watching today. I've been Colonel Failure. Chuck us a like on this one, because it's a traditional thing that I ask you to do, and you're a traditional kind of individual. I can sense that about you. Likewise, chuck us a subscribe. Wow, chuck us a subscribe. Subscribe. There you go. Because that's also, you know, the idea, upright and positive, and living a rose-tinted glasses kind of a world. Thanks for watching. I'll catch up with you very soon. Cheerio.